مرحبا بكم في قناة الشباب الدائم. نرجو منكم الاشتراك في القناة بالضغط على زر الاشتراك مع الضغط على زر الجرس لكي يصلكم إشعار بكل جديد. كما نرجو منكم مشاركة الفيديو حتى يستفيد منه أكبر عدد ممكن من الناس. وكذلك نرجو منكم زيارة موقعنا على الإنترنت حيث تجدون تفاصيل أكبر عن الشباب الدائم.
بعد متابعة أول لقاء للدكتور ديفيد سنكلير، أردنا من خلال قناة الشباب الدائم إعادة المحتوى مع تقديم ملخص لنصائح الدكتور ديفيد عن العادات التي ينصح باتباعها من أجل الحياة الصحية والعمر المديد. فهناك 4 عادات لحياة أطول، وهذه ما نقدر عليها. وكما ذكر الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير، فإن 20% من عمر الإنسان جيني أو وراثي، وال80% المتبقية هي من عادات الإنسان وأسلوبه في الحياة. لذلك فنحن في قناتنا مهتمون بالعادات ونمط الحياة التي تؤدي إلى حياة طويلة وصحية. لحسن الحظ كشف الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير في كتابه لماذا نتقدم في العمر ولماذا لا نضطر إلى ذلك، كشف الكثير من الأدوات والتكتيكات المتاحة للجميع تقريبا، بغض النظر عن العمر أو الموقع أو الحالة الاجتماعية والاقتصادية، والتي يمكن العمل بها وتعطي نتائج مبهرة، وسنلخصها في التالي.
أولا، الصيام، وعلى مبدأ وأن تصوموا خير لكم أن كنتم تعلمون، وكذلك النصائح النبوية في ذلك، صوم تصح وغيرها من الآثار التي تحث على الصيام. وعلميا فإن تأثير الصيام قوي بشكل لا يصدق لطول العمر، إذ يقول الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير: فبعد 25 عاما من البحث عن الشيخوخة وقراءة آلاف الأوراق العلمية، إذا كانت هناك نصيحة واحدة يمكنني تقديمها للبقاء بصحة جيدة لفترة أطول، فشيء واحد يمكنك القيام به لزيادة العمر الافتراضي إلى أقصى حد، وهو الصيام. وهذا ما قدمناه في قناة الشباب الدائم من قبل، وستجدون تفاصيل أكثر عن الصيام والطرق الصحيحة للصيام والإفطار الصحي وأنواع الصيام في كتاب الصيام والحمية الصيمية شباب دائم. يقول الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير: لا تحتاج إلى حرمان نفسك باستمرار، حتى إن الصيام المتقطع والشعور بالجوع مرة واحدة باليوم يؤدي إلى فوائد صحية هائلة. على وجه التحديد، تبين أن اتباع نظام غذائي دوري محدود السعرات الحرارية لمدة 5 أيام، ويسمى نظام محاكاة الصيام، حيث يعيد بناء الجسم على المستوى الخلوي، أن الأشخاص الذين أكملوا هذا البرنامج مرة واحدة في الشهر لمدة 3 أشهر فقدوا الوزن، وانخفضت الدهون في أجسامهم، وانخفض ضغط الدم عندهم، وكان لديهم مستويات أقل من الهرمون المشابه للأنسولين يسمى IGF-1، إذ أن المستويات المنخفضة من IGF-1 مرتبطة ارتباطا وثيقا بطول العمر. ويمكن للشخص العادي أن يكمل هذا البروتوكول 3 إلى 4 مرات في السنة، ويتوقع فوائد قابلة للقياس لمكافحة الشيخوخة. وهناك طرق صيام أخرى شائعة هذه الأيام، بما في ذلك تخطي وجب الإفطار وتناول غداء متأخرا، النظام الغذائي 16/8، وتناول 75% سعرات حرارية أقل لمدة يومين في الأسبوع، النظام الغذائي 5/2، وتخطي الطعام كليا لبضعة أيام في الأسبوع Eat Stop Eat، أو عدم تناول الطعام على الإطلاق لمدة أسبوع كامل كل 3 أشهر، من أجل الوصول إلى مرحلة الالتهام الذاتي أو لتوفيج. يقول الدكتور سنكلير: بمرور الوقت سيثبت الصوم أنه أكثر فعالية من غيره. ومع ذلك فإن أي نظام غذائي دوري تقريبا لا يؤدي إلى سوء التغذية، من المرجح أن يجعل جينات طول العمر تعمل بطريقه تؤدي إلى حياة أطول وأكثر صحة. ويقول الدكتور سنكلير أنه كلما بدأت بروتوكول الصيام مبكرا كان ذلك أفضل، ربما بعد سن 40 عندما يبدأ التراجع الجزيئي حقا في التأثير. وكما شاهدنا في الفيديو، فإن الدكتور سنكلير يتخطى شخصيا وجبة أو وجبتين كل يوم، فوجبة الفطور والغداء هما الوجبتان التي يتخطاهما كثيرا. 2. تناول نظام غذائي منخفض البروتين وغني بالنباتات. عندما تأكل، فأنت تريد التركيز على الخضار والبقوليات والحبوب الكاملة والدهون الصحية والقليل من اللحوم والغاء السكر. هذا هو النمط الغذائي للمعمرين حسب الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير، إذ يقول الدكتور سنكلير: ليس هناك مشكلة في استهلاك البروتين الحيواني، إذ أظهرت دراسة تلو الأخرى أن النظم الغذائية التي تعتمد على الحيوانات الصحية تكون صحية في الغالب، ولكن استخدام اللحوم المصنعة ومن مصدر حيواني غير صحي وبشكل كثيف مرتبط بارتفاع معدل وفيات القلب والأوعية الدموية وخطر الإصابة بالسرطان. والمشكلة الحقيقة في اللحوم المصنعة مثل النقانق والسجق ولحم الخنزير، حيث أظهرت مئات الدراسات وجود صلة بين هذه الأطعمة وسرطان القولون والمستقيم والبنكرياس والبروستات. وما ننصح به هو استهلاك اللحوم الحمراء والبيضاء والأسماك باعتدال، لكن بشكل عام يجب أن تختار المصدر الصحي لهذه اللحوم. يوصي الدكتور سنكلير بتناول البروتين الحيواني للأشخاص الذين يمارسون الرياضة والذين يمارسون الإجهاد الجسدي. أما الإشخاص القليلي الحركة فيفضل تقليل استهلاكهم للبروتين الحيواني وتعويضه بالبروتين النباتي. 3. الرياضة. إن الصيام وتناول نظام غذائي صحي يضع أجسامنا في حالة مفيدة من الضغط الغذائي والأحياء. فاستنادا إلى الدكتور سنكلير، فإن الشدائد الجسدية مهمة أيضا لتحريك دوائر النجاة وإطالة العمر. أن ممارسة الرياضة تضع مستوى إنتاجيا من الضغط على الجسم، وتحول الخلايا إلى وضع البقاء على قيد الحياة، وتجعلنا تعود إلى وضعها الطبيعي وهي أقوى من قبل وأكثر حيوية وشبابا. فلقد تبين أن الأشخاص الذين يمارسون الرياضة لمدة 150 دقيقة فقط في الأسبوع، أي ما يعادل نصف ساعة من الركض 5 أيام في الأسبوع، تقل أعمارهم عن 9 سنوات مقارنة بأولئك الذين لا يمارسون الرياضة ويعيشون حياة الدعة والخمول. ولكن ليست كل التمارين متساوية، فمن الضروري ممارسة الرياضة الهوائية على الأغلب وقليل من الرياضة اللاهوائية، فالشدة مهمة. ووفقا للدكتور سنكلير، إنه تدريب متقطع عالي الكثافة، وهو النوع الذي يرفع معدل ضربات القلب والتنفس بشكل كبير، والذي يشرك أكبر عدد من الجينات المعززة للصحة. يقول أنك ستعرف متى تقوم بهذا المستوى من النشاط القوي عندما تشعر بصعوبة. سيكون تنفسك عميقا وسريعا بنسبة 75 إلى 80% من الحد الأقصى لمعدل ضربات القلب، وستتعرق، ولن تكون كذلك قادر على قول أكثر من بضع كلمات دون توقف لالتقاط أنفاسك. هذا المستوى من المجهود البدني ينشط دفاعات الجسم ضد الشيخوخة، ولكنه لا يؤدي إلى أي ضرر دائم. يشمل روتين التمارين الشخصية للدكتور سنكلير الذهاب إلى صالة الألعاب الرياضية في معظم عطلات نهاية الأسبوع لرفع الأثقال والركض، كما أنه يمشي كثيرا طوال اليوم ويصعد السلالم كلما أمكن ذلك. يقول: تشغل التمارين الجينات لتجعلنا صغارا مرة أخرى على المستوى الخلوي. هل الجمع بين الصيام والتمارين الرياضية يطيل عمرك؟ بالتأكيد، يختتم الدكتور سنكلير، ولكن لا يزال هناك المزيد الذي يمكننا القيام به. 4. التعرض للبرد. الحرارة. الصدمة. يعد التعرض لدرجات حرارة غير مريحة طريقة أخرى مثبتة لتنشيط جينات طول العمر. عندما يتم إخراجنا من منطقة درجة الحرارة المريحة لدينا، فإن استجابتنا للبقاء تعمل، مما يتسبب في حدوث تغييرات في نمط التنفس وتدفق الدم ومعدل ضربات القلب. على وجه التحديد، عندما نشعر بالبرد بشكل غير مريح، نقوم بتنشيط الدهون البنية الواقية في الجسم. يمكن الحصول على علاج بارد إضافي من خلال المشي ببساطة بقميص في يوم شتاء بارد، وترك النافذة مفتوحة طوال الليل أثناء النوم، أو أخذ حمام بارد. على وجه الخصوص، فإن ممارسة الرياضة في البرودة تزيد من إنتاج الدهون البنية المفيدة، لكن الاعتدال مهم. يقول الدكتور سنكلير: على غرار الصيام، من المرجح أن تأتي الفوائد العظيمة لأولئك الذين يقتربون من الحافة، ولكن ليس بعدها. انخفاض حرارة الجسم ليس مفيدا لصحتنا، لكن قشعريرة الأسنان، وثرثرة الأسنان، وارتعاش الذراعين ليست ظروفا خطيرة، وعندما نواجه هذه الحالات في كثير من الأحيان بشكل كاف، تتعرض جينات طول العمر للإجهاد الذي تحتاجه لطلب بعض الدهون الصحية الإضافية. التعرض للحرارة له فوائد أيضا، لكن الطريقة التي يعمل بها أقل وضوحا. نحن نعلم أن مستخدمي الساونا المتكررين قللوا من معدلات الإصابة بأمراض القلب والوفاة المبكرة، لكننا لا نعرف السبب بالضبط. يقول الدكتور سنكلير: في كلتا الحالتين هناك شيء واحد واضح، من المفيد لنا أن نقضي حياتنا بأكملها في المنطقة المحايدة حراريا. لم تتطور جيناتنا من أجل حياة مليئة بالراحة. في الأيام التي يذهب فيها إلى صالة الألعاب الرياضية، يمارس الدكتور سنكلير ممارسة شخصية تتمثل في الذهاب للساونا ثم الغطس في حمام سباحة مثلج، كما أنه يحاول البقاء في الجانب البارد أثناء النهار وعندما ينام في الليل.
تقدم لكم قناة الشباب الدائم وثائقيات من مشاهير العلماء المتخصصين في الشباب الدائم. اليوم ستكون الحلقة الأولى، ونقدمها على شكل لقاء أجره السيد إد مايلت ضمن برنامجه ماكس أوت، والذي يستضيف فيه المشاهير في اختصاصات مختلفة. في هذه الحلقة يستضيف أشهر عالم في مجال الشباب الدائم، وهو الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير، وهو من مواليد 26 من حزيران يونيو لعام 1969، وهو عالم أحياء أسترالي ويحمل درجة الأستاذية في علم الوراثة، ومدير مشارك لمركز بيولوجيا الشيخوخة في كلية الطب بجامعة هارفارد، وهو معروف بأبحاثه حول الشيخوخة، وحصل على العديد من الجوائز لأبحاثه، بما في ذلك ميدالية البحوث الطبية الأسترالية وجائزة الحدود في الشيخوخة والتجديد. في عام 2014 تم إدراج الدكتور ديفيد في مجلة التايم كواحد من 100 شخص الأكثر نفوذا في العالم، وفي عام 2018 تم إدراجه في مجلة تايم ماجازين واحدا من 50 الأكثر تأثيرا في الرعاية الصحية عالميا. وتم منح الدكتور ديفيد وسام أستراليا من أجل الخدمة المتميزة للبحوث الطبية في بيولوجيا الشيخوخة وإطالة العمر، وكعالم وراثي وأكاديمي لمبادرات الأمن البيولوجي، وكداعية لدراسة العلوم. ولقد ظهر الدكتور ديفيد في منافذ إخبارية مختلفة إلى جانب مجلة تايم، فظهر في نيويورك تايمز وتشارلي روز شو ومجلة 60 دقيقة ومجلة بوسطن وواشنطن بوست والإيكونوميست وتيد وجو روغان إكسبيرينس وغيرها. ومن أهم كتب الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير والذي نشره عام 2019 هو كتاب العمر: لماذا نتقدم في العمر ولماذا لا نضطر لذلك؟ وسنحاول في قناتنا ترجمة هذا الكتاب وتقديمه للجمهور العربي في أقرب وقت ممكن.
Senescent cells, so zombie cells that accumulate, all these things, we actually, as a field, I'm a scientist, first and foremost, we declared victory over aging about 10 years ago. We said there are 8 causes of aging. Let's put them in a pie chart. We're done. We know what causes aging. And I'm there thinking, that's great, but what causes those things?
Right.
Is there a unified theory of aging?
Okay.
And that's what I've got in the book. It's called the Information Theory of Aging. And it can explain, I think, why all of those things happen. So instead of building 9 dams or 8 dams on 8 tributaries, we may be able to go all the way up and stop the main driver of what causes us to get old.
المشهد الثاني يقدم السيد إد معلومات عن كتاب الدكتور ديفيد، وينصح باقتنائه مع العلم أن هناك نسخة صوتية للكتاب، ثم يسأل الدكتور ديفيد عن مشكلته الشخصية إذ كان يعاني من هشاشة العظام، وقد وصف له الطبيب دواء الميتوفورمان من أجل تقليل الالتهابات في الجسم، وهذا المركب هو جزء من حديث الدكتور ديفيد في كتابه، وله تأثيرات كثيرة في محاربة الشيخوخة إضافة إلى تنظيم السكر.
The thing with metformin that everyone needs to know, and will know if they get the book, is that there are 3 main ways to slow down aging, 3 genetic pathways. I work on one pathway called the sirtuins, which we can talk about later, but they're a crux of defending against aging. There are 2 others. One responds to how much protein you eat, and the third one responds to how much energy, chemical energy is in your body. That's metformin.
Okay.
So metformin will trick your body into thinking there's not enough energy, and it'll respond and actually make your body, we think, fight against aging,
Right.
and particularly type 2 diabetes. So metformin is a drug that came out from the French lilac. It's originally a natural molecule, but it was tweaked a bit, so it's now a drug. You need a prescription. But I'm shocked. Are you still taking metformin?
I'm not.
Ah, well, all right. We need to talk.
Okay.
But I'm not an MD. But
Why should we talk? Should I be still taking it?
I don't make any recommendations.
In general.
But what I do is I take it.
You do?
Yeah, I don't leave home without it.
Can I tell you why I stopped, and you can correct me?
Sure.
Okay. I stopped because I started to read at least anecdotal evidence, because I do lift weights.
Yep.
I'm an athlete. I'd like to think of myself as an athlete, even though I'm pushing 50 years old. That it may have some negative implications on athletic performance, and or recovery.
All right, so now we're really jumping in fast. All right.
There we go.
All right, so
I've been waiting for today
this
for a long time. Sorry.
Yeah, so metformin, what it does is
Okay.
it inhibits your mitochondria. It
Okay.
makes your body think you don't have enough energy,
Okay.
and your body will respond accordingly, and you become what's called insulin sensitive. You'll have low glucose levels in your body, and it'll prevent type 2 diabetes.
Right.
What we also know from studies of 10,000 up to 100,000 people in some studies, people who take metformin seem to be protected not just against diabetes, but against heart disease, cancer, frailty, and Alzheimer's. That's all good. That's what you find in an anti-aging or longevity pill.
Okay.
Metformin's great because it's, as far as we know, pretty safe. It's been taken by probably
Right.
100 million people around the world. It's on the list of the World Health Organization's list of essential medicines for humanity. So it's pretty good. You're not going to die from it. It's very rare. Consult a doctor as you did.
Okay.
But I was surprised that your doctor put you on metformin even though you didn't have diabetes. That's very rare.
The reason was, and I won't say her name, but I think she's sort of at the cutting edge of this, and she really does believe that one of the greatest risks to my health or anybody's health is developing type 2 diabetes.
Great. So your doctor knows a lot more than most doctors?
Correct. Most cardiologists, it's Lipitor and Crestor and, don't eat a steak.
Exactly.
Right.
And their view, and I train a lot of doctors and work with them, but their view is, unless you pass the threshold of a disease,
Right.
we won't treat it. But metformin will prevent diabetes as well and get your glucose levels. And actually the best predictor of longevity right now, besides this clock, is your blood glucose levels. You want to keep them down.
Okay.
You do not want to go up. And I was going up and up and up. So I started taking metformin a couple of years ago.
You do.
And ostensibly my biological age, based on different tests, not the clock, but the other tests, went from 58 down to 31.4.
It's incredible. And you look 31.4 and I look 58. So I need to get back on metformin.
I was joking with Ed that I needed to wear this padded suit so that I don't look such a wimp.
Oh, I think you look
But
great.
no, you're looking great.
Thank you.
But let's get back to the muscles. So this is called hypertrophy, muscular hypertrophy, which is great. I would love to look like you, and I just don't have the time to do it. But it's great. Plus you will be much stronger when you're older, which is key to living longer.
Bone density, things of that sort.
All of
right?
that's great.
Right.
And actually one of the things we like to say in my field is the best way to live a long life is to hang on to the handrail, which basically means don't slip and break your femur or you're done for, like my grandmother.
Right.
But let's get into something really important. A lot of people aren't sure about metformin because there were 2 studies just this year that showed that it slows muscle hypertrophy.
Right.
But here's the good news.
Okay.
And I know the world's experts in this, and I've talked to the authors of the paper. So here's the scoop.
All right.
First time.
Awesome.
All right, you're getting this the first time.
This is awesome.
What they found, and this is also work that's not yet out, so let me give you the scoop.
Okay.
The patients that got metformin and those that didn't, they all got bigger muscles and they all got stronger. Okay. One group got slightly bigger muscles. That was the group on placebo, and those on metformin didn't get so big. But when they did the strength test, they were equal.
Wow.
So they're all strong.
Wow.
They may not look as good.
Okay.
So I think it's a vanity versus longevity decision.
Okay.
But I think there's a way around this as well. Now we're on the cutting edge, so we don't know for sure, but what I do is when I work out, I stop taking metformin, let my body recover for a couple of days, and then I go back on it.
Ah.
And Peter Attia, the good doctor who studies this, we both agree that you don't want to be taking the same medicine every day necessarily, just as you don't want to work out every day. You need to give your body a rest.
Okay.
So, we cycle
So
these
in
things.
between workouts, you might, if someone works out, let's say Monday, Wednesday, Friday, you might suggest that the workout days specifically they not take something like metformin on those days?
Well, that's what I do.
Okay.
That's based on everything we know in the world right now.
Okay. And
المشهد
by the way,
الثالث.
thank you for that.
يشكر السيد إد الدكتور ديفيد لوجوده بيننا، ويبين له أن هذا الموضوع أصبح من أهم مواضيع العصر ويتطور بسرعة كبيرة جدا. والسؤال هو: هل يمكن لإنسان أن يضيف إلى حياته سنوات إضافية أو يرجع بالعمر إلى الوراء؟ والسؤال هو: كم سنة يمكن أن يضيف الإنسان إلى عمره أو يرجع بها إلى الوراء؟
Well, so someone like me doesn't typically exist because they're scared of what our colleagues will say. And it's pretty rough for a scientist to be out there talking about things that are really on the cutting edge and projecting into the future.
And to some extent speculative still, correct?
Right.
Right. Based on evidence, but speculative.
But how selfish is it for me and my family
Right.
to reap the benefits? We're all scientists in my family. We're on similar programs. How selfish is that for me to keep that bottled up? I want to tell the world what I'm learning.
It's wonderful.
And we're in a world where now everybody can learn as fast as I'm learning and what I'm doing. And that's I feel an obligation to do that. But what about talking about the metformin, the story?
2.5 years it says it takes off, or adds
Well,
to. So if you're,
it can.
right.
Yeah.
Theoretically, if you're 50, you're now 47.5 if you're on the normal dose of metformin is what they're saying. But we don't really know. We don't know what it's going to do to diminish your ability to get type 2 diabetes, what that could do, heart disease, all the inflammation in your body because of these glucose spikes, correct?
Yes. Well, so here's the most important take-home message is that only 20% of your longevity and how you'll feel when you're 70 and 80 and 90 is genetic.
Okay.
The rest is in your hands. Wow. Isn't that's liberating?
Yes.
I mean, you can sit on the couch, you can eat potato chips, you can not exercise, you can eat whatever you want. But you're minimizing your potential.
Right.
And what we all have in our bodies, what we co-discovered in my lab, is that there are genes that control how long we live. We work on these pathways. And what we've discovered is they don't just exist, they respond to how we live. And what we want to do is trick our bodies into thinking there's adversity. Biological stress, not emotional stress, but biological stress.
Okay.
So now we understand, why does exercise make us healthier and live longer? Why does being hungry make us live longer? Why do all these things, eating good foods, it's because they're turning on these body defenses, these longevity genes that we work on. And that's the revelation. They're in all of us, but they become complacent unless we trick our bodies into getting this feeling of adversity.
Adversity.
So we call this hormesis.
Okay.
Hormesis is what doesn't kill you, makes you live longer. And that's the reason you should be running and getting out of breath. That's the reason you should be eating plants that are being stressed themselves. You get the benefits of those molecules that they make for their own benefit.
Okay.
We call that xenohormesis. Terrible word, but anyway, it's good to eat stress plants. Like that's why red wine's good for you, we believe. It's full of those molecules.
Thank God. Thank God.
Yeah, so resveratrol, you'll remember.
Yes. Where are you? So let's go there.
يتحدث الدكتور ديفيد عن مصطلح الإكسينوهورميسيز، وهو مصطلح علمي حديث من مبتكرات الدكتور ديفيد، ويعني الإجهاد النباتي، أي تعريض النبات لظروف قاسية حتى ينتج موادا تساعده في البقاء، ومن أهمها مركب الريزيفيراتول.
Thank you.
All right. So I also dodged the question, not intentionally, of how far can we slow and reverse aging.
You did. I'm sorry. You're right. I let you dodge that.
Well,
I'm so fascinated.
I worry because people say, oh, how can you say that?
Right.
Right. So this is my best guess, is that you can alter your lifespan at least a decade by how you live your life, maybe more.
Wow.
And my father is an example of someone who took life by the horns, changed his life. He's super fit. He's now 80. He's living life like he was 30 still. He's got no diseases.
Is that right?
He just put his name on a wait list for his dream car. I'm thinking, a wait list? You're optimistic.
That is awesome.
He started a new career. Really, this is the future for all of us if we look after our bodies and do what we think is the right thing.
Love it.
Right. So that I think that 10 years is
10 years is at least, based on current science, something you could be doing.
Right. And actually, every 4 years longer we live, we gain another year, just because the trajectory of the science, how it's going.
المشهد الخامس. يشكر المقدم الله على وجود أناس مثل الدكتور ديفيد، ويسأل عن هذا المركب الريزيفيراتول، وقد كان سببا لمشاكل كثيرة واجهها الدكتور ديفيد، ومدى أهميته لإطالة العمر.
Resveratrol is this molecule in red wine that
Right.
is thought to protect the French from high-fat foods.
Yeah.
And we discovered that it activates an enzyme in the body called SIRT1, one of these sirtuin protective enzymes that's activated by hunger and exercise.
Okay.
So resveratrol we discovered as the first molecule that could mimic a calorically restricted diet and exercise. This wasn't an excuse to just sit on the couch and pop a pill, because we actually found that if mice took resveratrol and exercised and ate a healthy diet, they lived the longest.
Okay.
So it's a combination, but you want to keep these enzymes active, because as we get older, these defensive enzymes like SIRT1, they go down in their activity.
Okay.
So there are two ways to keep SIRT1 super active.
Okay.
Besides living the healthy lifestyle that many of us know about and is in my book, page 302, 303.
Unbelievable.
Jump to the, because some people, they just want the facts. Just want the list.
Right.
But resveratrol is a remarkable molecule because plants make it to survive, because plants have SIRT2 and longevity enzymes as well.
Okay.
But when we ingest that, we get the benefits.
Okay.
Right? So you said I was not as hot on that.
Yeah.
What happened was...
Yeah, okay, I was right.
What happened was, all of us who have been blessed to be successful in what we do have gone through really hard times. And I had my moment, the worst time of my life, in 2010. So I'd spent the
What
last...
was that? Do you mind saying what it was?
Yeah, sure. So I had discovered resveratrol activates anti-aging pathways. We'd shown that it extended lifespan in everything from a yeast cell to a worm to a fly to a mouse, protected them against a Western diet, and even extended their lifespan when we gave it to them every other day.
Okay.
That was great. We developed drugs that were showing efficacy, working in humans to treat a disease called psoriasis,
Yes.
which is inflammation on the skin. Everything was looking like we were going to be the first people to make a drug that treats aging on the market.
Okay.
And then a couple of companies, for reasons that we can only speculate, came out with their science and said, it's all wrong. Everything David said is wrong.
I remember that.
It blew up.
Yeah, I remember that.
It trashed the trials, and I was the pariah of the scientific world. And it was tough. I spent a week in bed. I couldn't get out of bed. It was real depression. And I was really angry with the world, I'll admit, because here I am trying to do my best.
Right.
I'm putting my life aside. I'm putting my family aside to help the world, like you do.
Yes.
Well, maybe not your family, but you know, we want to help the
exactly
world.
what you mean.
And it was, and then everyone said, "Ha ha, you're wrong. Screw you." And it was tough. But you know, my passion is to leave the world a better place.
Yeah, this is your calling.
So I
obviously.
couldn't stay in bed.
Awesome.
You know, that to me is worse than death, is just sitting there.
Hope everybody just heard that.
Yeah,
Right.
it really is. You got to have, my mission is to change the world in this way. So got out of bed and spent the next 3 years testing whether what these companies were saying, and I'll say who they were, Pfizer and Amgen, both didn't agree with us. But what it did, and the silver lining was, it forced us to do even better science and go back and test our hypothesis very, very rigorously. And we put out a paper in the journal Science, which is the best in the US, best in the world probably, showing that we were right, that resveratrol really was activating this enzyme and wasn't what the naysayers were saying. But you know what? In the media, there were crickets. No one cares about the comeback guy.
Right, that's
They just cared about the fall.
Right.
So what we've done over the last, 7 years, is we've been testing this even more rigorously.
Okay.
I'll tell you what we've done.
Okay.
We've created a mouse. We can genetically create mice with very specific changes.
Okay.
We changed the mouse by changing one amino acid, one part of this protein. So you don't mind if I get a little bit technical here?
Do it.
All right.
Please.
So the enzymes are basically machines that change other proteins.
Okay.
And SIRT1, it's the traffic cop. It tells the body to fight diseases, fight aging.
Okay.
But to do that, it has to move. It has to change things.
Okay.
And what it does is it has this active enzyme activity in the middle of, that's its chest. But this arm is the activator. This is the the accelerator pedal.
Okay.
So the accelerator pedal is pushed by resveratrol. Resveratrol will come in,
I get it.
stick here,
Yep.
push the accelerator, and now the SIRT1 enzyme is fighting against disease.
Okay.
Now we figured out that you can block this step by changing one little thing. Give it tennis elbow, it can't bend the elbow. Now resveratrol cannot work anymore.
Got it.
So we made a mouse that was unable to bend this arm and activate. So the accelerator pedal, we took it out of the system. The mouse is otherwise normal, doesn't have the accelerator pedal though. So if we're wrong and we give resveratrol to these mice, they won't live longer on a high-fat diet, Western diet. If we're right, resveratrol won't work at all.
Okay.
And we got the second result, 100%. And that's
Awesome.
as close to proof that we were right in the first place. So what I'm hoping is that'll reinvigorate the field and we'll get those drugs back into those clinical trials.
Okay.
But I haven't been sitting on my hands. I've been working on other molecules that seem to have a lot of promise and maybe even better than the original discovery.
Such as?
Well, we call them NAD boosters, or NAD, some people call them NADs. So there are two ways to activate these protective enzymes. One is the accelerator pedal. The other is the gas that comes in through here. And without either of those, you don't have hyperactive system. And as we get older, we lose this NAD. So it's estimated that by the time you're my age, 50, and you're getting close, you have about half the levels you did of NAD when you were young, when you were 20. So of course your defenses against aging are going to be about half the levels that they were. So there are some ways to keep your NAD levels relatively high. One is to exercise, lose your breath, work out.
Lose your breath. You said that a couple times.
You want to lose your breath.
So not walking cardio, lose your breath cardio.
Yeah, that's the best way, at least based on the animal studies we've done and some human studies. And then the second is you want to be hungry, at least part of the day. And that'll raise the levels of...
What do you mean by that? Like, so do you believe in intermittent fasting, or do you...
I do.
You do?
I do. We used to restrict calories the whole day in these, what we call calorie restriction. And that was the paradigm for about 70 years, actually. And then in the last 10 years, we've realized, hey, you don't need to always be hungry. You can actually eat a decent meal or two. But don't eat 3 meals a day. Don't always snack. Because being hungry is what turns on these protective enzymes. And so I've now shifted my life to eating small meals. What I do is I skip breakfast as best I can. Eat a very late lunch or even forget to eat lunch and then eat a normal dinner.
This is more.
المشهد 12. يعلق السيد إد: هذا الأمر تم مناقشته مع الكثير من العلماء، ولكن الحديث كان عن الفوائد الصحية وليست فوائد الشباب الدائم. فقط أريد أن أسأل عن نقطة مهمة، وهي كيفية تناولك الريزافيراتول. هل تتناوله مع الحليب أو اللبن أو الماء؟
Well, so there are clinical trials over the last 10 years based on our research, and some have failed and some have succeeded. And the main reason that they've failed, in my view, is that doctors who don't understand resveratrol have just given the pill with water. And resveratrol is the equivalent of brick dust. It's like eating sand, right? We're here on the beach. If you eat sand, you're not going to absorb it. But if you crush up the sand and mix it with things, you might absorb a little bit. That's what we do with resveratrol. And what I do personally is I have this amazing yogurt that I make myself. And I mix it with that, and it dissolves beautifully. And I have a couple of spoons of that.
So if I'm taking a pill, could I take it with a yogurt? Is that what you're suggesting?
That would work in your stomach. I have powder in my basement, so I just spoon it in. I take about half a gram to a gram.
Awesome.
But yeah, you got to do that. And so the recent studies that have actually included resveratrol with a meal have succeeded in lowering blood sugar. And there are actually now, I was just at a meeting in Washington, D.C. where they have beautiful clinical data showing that it works like metformin to reduce blood sugar as well.
So this blood sugar concept, because that's my cardiologist.
بخصوص السكر في الدم، يسأل السيد إد: هل يؤثر مستوى السكر في الدم على عمر الإنسان؟
Absolutely. Yeah. That's a really good point. The inflammation is a problem, because if you have inflammation, it'll also shut down these defenses against aging, and that'll lead to more inflammation and just accelerate aging. You know, we know that we get to about 40 and we're still pretty good. We get to 50 and we're starting to feel a little different, looking different.
That's absolutely true.
And then you fall off a cliff.
Yes.
That's this positive feedback of inflammation, shutting down longevity genes, and vice versa. And it just...
المشهد 7. يقول السيد إد: أنا رأيت آثار الشيخوخة على نفسي، وخاصة النظر وأمور أخرى.
There are things you can do to slow that down, and things that we're doing that slow and reverse aspects, and then technology that can reverse all aspects.
Okay, let's keep talking about that. By the way, everybody.
يعلق السيد إد قائلا: بالمناسبة الجميع، هناك واحد من هذه العروض جمهوري يحب هذا، فقط كما تعلم هناك العديد منهم يقودون سياراتهم الآن وسيعيدون هذا، سيشاهدونه مرة أخرى أو يستمعون إليه مرة أخرى، وأنت تسجل كل هذه الملاحظات. لذلك أريد أن أخوض في شيئين محددين آخرين. لقد تحدثنا عن الريزافيراتول وتحدثنا عن الميتوفورمين. هناك نوع من هذا الكوكتيل الذي تقترحه إلى حد ما. أريد أن أتحدث عن هرمون النمو. ما هو رأيك في هرمون النمو؟ هل نأخذه خارجيا؟ أقصد كحقن خارجي، أو علينا القيام بأشياء تزيد إنتاجه؟ ولماذا هرمونات النمو مهمة جدا؟ فما هو رأيك؟
So in my field of aging research, it's debated tremendously. And most of the debate comes from studies of animals. And what we find is that animals that have low levels of growth hormone live longer. So there's this...
Low levels live longer.
Right.
Okay.
But there's something that my colleagues don't appreciate, and that is a lifelong treatment of, or lifelong existence with low growth hormone. What you end up with is dwarfism. So small animals, due to a lack of development, live long.
Oh, wow.
It's also, by the way, known that the smaller you are, you tend to live longer. And we know that from pet dogs. If you ever had a large dog, you know the problem. So the reason is that during development, we're actually slowing down the clock. And the clock is changing when you're young as well. But what I believe anyway, is having read thousands of papers on this topic, is that growth hormone isn't bad, but it won't make you live longer. Because what it's doing is some benefits. It's going to improve your body's metabolism, it's going to help you grow muscle. But what it's not doing is turning on the longevity genes, which is what you need to do, the kind of things that I'm doing to get those active as well. So what's exciting to me is maybe you could take growth hormone, but then trick the body into thinking that it's lacking growth hormone and that you're exercising tremendously.
How would you do that?
Trick it?
Yeah.
Well, what I do is the combination of the metformin with the resveratrol, and there's the NAD booster. Which I take. Those are the three main components. By the way, I don't recommend anybody do anything. I'm a PhD, not a doctor. But I feel an obligation to say what I do.
المشهد 16 يعلق السيد إد قائلا: بالمناسبة هناك الكثير من الشركات المنتجة تضع اسمك أو صورتك على منتجاتها. هل لك علاقة بذلك؟
I'm glad you mentioned that, Ed, because if you look on the internet, you might think that I have 10 companies.
You would.
There's even a Sinclair Labs. Somebody started a company with my name on there.
Goodness.
So I don't do that, and there's a very good reason for that.
Okay.
It's because I need to be able to give you my unbiased scientific opinion. Okay. And if I have some favorites, why would you trust what I'm saying?
Good point.
المشهد 17 يعلق السيد إد: تجد رجلا يشبهني، ربما كان هذا الرجل مهتما باستبدال الهرمونات، وأنا أتساءل عن أفكارك حول ذلك. لذلك قال لي الناس: مع نقصان هرمونات جسمك فأنت تتقدم في العمر، ولهذا السبب من أجل مكافحة الشيخوخة وخاصة علاج التستوستيرون لكل من الرجال والنساء الآن هو البروتوكول الموصوف والموصى به. ما هو رأيك دكتور ديفيد؟
Yeah, I think that makes perfect sense to me.
Okay.
There are 2 points. One is that maintain what you've lost.
Okay.
I think it makes perfect sense.
Okay.
Testosterone and growth hormone.
Okay.
But don't think that they're going to make you live longer. That's
Okay.
not the solution.
Okay.
I think you need to combine that with these other things that will put your body in a defensive state.
Okay.
Because testosterone and growth hormone, they're going to do the opposite. They're going to put your body in the growth, reproduction state.
Okay.
Which is great when you're young, but it's not going to extend your lifespan.
Do you believe?
المشهد 18 يسأل السيد إد: هل هي حكاية إشاعات أن هرمون النمو التستوستيرون قد يساعد على نمو أعضاء في جسمك؟ بمعنى آخر قد يتسع القلب مثلا؟ وثانيا من المحتمل إذا أصبت بسرطان أو ورم فإن هرمون النمو يسرع من نمو السرطان؟ هل لدينا فكرة؟ هل لديك رأي في ذلك؟
Well, so it's debated. So there is the truth is we don't actually know, but I've read all the literature, and my personal take on the science is that it's not a risk to develop tumors. But if you have a tumor, then I think then you get serious with your doctor, and I think you stop this stuff. But everything I've seen is that things that you and I do, they're not going to make things worse. But if something's detected, then we're in new territory. So for instance, NAD boosters, I take those. If you give those to mice, they have new blood vessels. It's like a super drug for athletes. They can run further. But it also, you don't want extra blood vessels growing in your tumor. Right?
Good point.
So I think that with an abundance of caution, anyone who has a tumor, don't take these things. But it's not going to necessarily grow a tumor if you don't have one already.
Wonderful. Okay.
المشهد 19 يسأل السيد إد: لقد قرأت بعض الأشياء التي تشرح ما يحدث ويسبب الشيخوخة، فهل يمكن أن تشرح لنا هل هو عدم قدرة الخلية على قراءة الحمض النووي كما اعتادت، أو ما الذي يحدث والذي يتسبب في حدوث ذلك على أجسامنا؟
Good. We're done. We're done here. Ed's going to do the rest of the interview by himself. No, it's serious. Seriously,
Okay.
you summed it up probably better than I could.
Okay.
Which is the analogy I use is a DVD. These old things you used to put movies on.
Okay.
Any kids watching or listening, these are old things you used to put digital information on. But they're a good analogy because you can actually scratch them.
Okay.
Right? And so a DVD is the digital information. And our genome, our DNA, is digital. Instead of zeros and ones, it's A, T, C, G chemicals. That information is actually very robust. You can get it out of an old person, it's intact mostly. You can get it out of a fossil. It lasts for thousands, if not millions of years. That's the cool thing about digital information.
Okay.
It lasts. There's another type of information that controls the reading of those genes.
Yeah.
We call that not the genetic, but the epigenetic information. And epigenetic basically says, how is the DNA organized so a cell reads the right genes at the right time? And we don't know as much about it because it's much harder to read the epigenome than the genome.
Okay.
The reason is the epigenome is not digital information, it's actually analog. It sucks. Anyone who's had a cassette tape or a phonograph or a record player
Sure.
is actually experiencing the problems with analog information.
Okay.
There's generations of people now that have never experienced analog in their lives. But trust me, analog sucks. And our bodies, half of the information in our bodies is analog.
Okay.
And that's the problem. That's why we age.
Okay.
Because we have an analog system that reads the DNA. And over time, it doesn't read the right genes at the right time anymore.
Okay.
And cells, when they don't read the right genes, they don't function well. So our blood glucose goes up, we get weak, we get diseases. That's aging. But also, what happens is that the cells forget what type of cells they are.
Yeah.
They despecialize. We call it X-differentiation. Essentially, we become a melange, a collection of cells that have forgotten what kind of cells they should be.
Got you.
And that is pretty bad news, right?
Yes.
If you scratch a DVD, you're in trouble. We've been looking for the polish on that DVD, and I think we found it.
Okay. And it is?
Well, we call it reprogramming,
Okay.
genetic or epigenetic reprogramming. And it's a set of genes that we can put into cells or into the eye of a mouse and reset the age of that animal. Remember that clock that we're going to measure on you?
Yes.
We call that the epigenetic clock for a good reason because it's actually the analog changes in the cell. Right?
Okay.
But here's what we can do. We can actually tell the cell, now that you're old and you're not reading the right genes, go back and read the genes the way you should.
Okay.
It's essentially polishing the DVD. Another way to think of it is we're rebooting the cell.
Yes.
We've got corrupted software. Screw that. Let's restart the whole computer.
Okay.
And you're young again.
Okay.
Right? Erase the hard drive, start again.
Wow.
But we didn't know that was possible until a year ago.
Wow. Wow.
That's what's in the book. I was writing the book as we made these discoveries.
Wow. Wow.
Imagine that. There's a memory of being young in all of our bodies that we just have to tell reset.
Oh my gosh.
المشهد 20. يسأل السيد إد الدكتور ديفيد: هل تمانع في تسمية الشركة التي تشارك فيها والتي كنت أقرأ عنها والتي لها علاقة بشبكية العين؟ أنت تفعلها، أنت تعمل على ذلك تحديدا بعينيك، أليس هذا صحيحا؟
So it's still in stealth mode.
Yeah. This is incredible.
But I'll reveal it to
Okay.
all your listeners
Thank
for
you.
the first time. It's called Iduna, and it's interesting. The first part of it is eye because we're going to treat glaucoma.
Oh my gosh, this is huge.
And then Iduna is also the Norse goddess of longevity. But here's what we want to do. And I'm an entrepreneur just like you because I believe not just in making discoveries but making them practical for people. Iduna is planning and working towards treating the loss of vision in people.
This is unbelievable.
But if we can reverse aging in the eye, what can't we reverse aging in? So it's early days, but what we've just discovered, and we have a scientific paper, if you Google my name, you'll find it.
Okay.
We were able to reprogram the retina of an old mouse that couldn't see very well anymore to be young again. So the nerves in the back of the eye, they became young, and these mice completely got their vision back.
المشهد 21. يعلق السيد إد: قد يكون هذا أحد أكثر الأشياء إثارة، حيث سنكون في طليعة هذا الكوكب. والسبب في أهميته بالنسبة لي هو مع تقدمي في العمر كانت لدي قوة نظر مثالية، والآن أجد أنني لا أستطيع قراءة لافتات الشوارع من على بعد 30 مترا. هل تعتقد أن هناك إمكانية لعلاج الأشخاص الذين يعانون من مشاكل النظر والمشاكل المشابهة بطريقة عكس الشيخوخة؟
I don't want to overpromise because
Sure.
it's just a year old and we're making discoveries pretty fast, but it's still in animals. But let's just suspend all sorts of disbelief right now and talk about what's possible. So what I can tell you is the reason that you and I are losing our vision, the reason we have to do this at night, is because the nerves in the back of our eye are not youthful anymore, and they're forgetting that they're nerves.
Right, as we said earlier, yes.
And if I reprogram your eye just with an injection, what I think would happen is that you'd get, those nerves would say, oh shit, I got to work well again. That I think we can do. Our nerves in our eye are no different than a mouse's eye, really.
Okay.
But we did another experiment. We crushed the back of the optic nerve. We really, like you crush your spine, it's not going to grow back unless you're a baby. We reversed the age of those nerves so much that they actually started growing back to the brain even after we killed them.
Oh my God.
المشهد 22 يعلق السيد إد قائلا: هذا كان في مجال العين كما قلت، مع احتمالية تطبيق ذلك في أي جسم من الجسم. الآن نحن لا نتحدث عن عقد من الزمان، نحن الآن نتحدث عن الآن. وسؤالي للدكتور ديفيد: ما هو الدوكسيسيكلين؟
It's an antibiotic that you take for Lyme disease and some other infections. It's pretty common.
But what's the application here?
Well, so we engineered our treatment so that we put the genes in the eye.
Yes.
And then we give the mice doxycycline for 3 weeks.
Okay.
And that turns on the genes.
Okay.
They get their vision back. Then we turn it off again by taking away the antibiotic.
Got it.
So here's a future scenario.
Wow.
We can put those genes into our whole body. And as we get older, or God forbid, we break our back or we injure ourselves and we're not going to survive, we get an IV of doxycycline or we take a pill and we become like Deadpool and we can regrow things like an axolotl would chop their limb off and they grow again.
Oh my God.
And then we stop taking the antibiotic, we're young, and then we can wait another few decades.
Right, do it again.
Right. So here's the cool thing. And I'm going to mention this in my social media because we don't know the answer yet, but I'll keep you updated. I'll give you a call. We don't
we'll
know.
have you back on.
We don't.
Right.
I'd love to come back on. We don't know how many times you can press the reset button and restore the hard drive. It could be once. We've done that. Maybe it's 100 times.
Oh my gosh.
المشهد 23 يعلق السيد إد: أنا لابد لي، أنا لست متشككا، ولكنني أفكر في الصورة الأكبر. هل سوف يكون هناك طعام كاف في العالم يعيش فيه الناس 300 و400 سنة؟ هل فكرت في ذلك؟
So I talk about this in my book also because we can't just solve aging and make people live a decade or more longer without tackling the other problems we have. But what I've done is the calculations and the rationale comes out that this is the best thing we can do for the planet. Now it sounds crazy, right? That if we have people living longer, how is that going to help? Well, first of all, it doesn't raise the population that much. In fact, most countries are leveling off anyway. Okay, even if we stopped aging today, the rate of population growth isn't that much. There aren't that many old people that are dying, actually. It's actually less than the rate of immigration right now. Yep. And there are a lot of countries that need help. Japan is losing its population, Europe as well. So there's that. But talk about consumption. We throw away half our food in this country. We've got to fix that first.
Sure.
Right? But the biggest thing, the big takeaway message is, if we can keep people healthier for longer and just have them die in a matter of months at the end, which is what happens if you live to 100.
I understand now. Okay, I get it.
So centenarians, we call them, people who make it over 100, they die quickly, usually have a heart attack or a kidney failure. They cost at least 1/3 less than the rest of us.
I get it.
Let's get us all there.
I just got it.
Yeah, that's trillions of dollars saving. We already waste a lot of money on healthcare, keeping people alive for 10 years in nursing homes. I think we all have a duty to keep ourselves healthy for longer, if not for ourselves, but for our children and our grandkids who have to take care of us for 10 years.
This is a
المشهد
revolutionary
24
conversation for me.
يعلق السيد إد: هذه محادثة ثورية. دكتور ديفيد، أريد أن أذهب إلى شيء آخر، فقط أريد أن يفهم الناس بعض الاحتمالات المتاحة. من فضلك دكتور ديفيد، حدثنا عن تقنية كريسبر قليلا، لأن هذا مقترن بما وصفته للتو. من فضلك.
So we've gone through what we can do today in our daily lives.
Right.
And there's cutting edge technology that I talk about in my book, and we just talked about, that's coming very soon.
Yes.
And there's medicines already that you can possibly take. But the future looks incredible. I've already said that even if we don't have these breakthroughs, every 4 years we get to live longer, we get another year of life. That's great. But what's coming makes my head spin. And I've been at the cutting edge of genetics for the last 30 years. And I just can't believe, every morning I wake up and I pinch myself that we're living in the future already. But what's coming blows my mind. So in my department at Harvard Medical School, I get to work with people who grow eyes in a dish and people who work on all sorts of futuristic stuff, growing brains in a dish. George Church is one of my good friends and colleagues. My lab's just on the different floor than his in the same building. So he's one of the guys that, women as well, there were a team of people that showed that you could actually edit the human genome.
This is huge.
So we can now read the genome. Instead of $1 billion to read your genome, I can do it in my lab for a device that big.
Right now.
For $100.
Right.
I can do that today.
Yes.
And soon it'll be in a few hours for less than the cost of a needle.
Crazy.
That's the crazy stuff. But it gets even crazier when we can actually change the genome. We don't just read it, we write it. And we can change genes, we can put new genes in very easily. There are drugs on the market. Most people may not realize, you may not realize that we can now, the FDA approved drugs, we are changing people's genetic diseases. We're curing genetic diseases. Yes. We are living in the future, man.
It's crazy.
But the future for us is going to be even crazier because we are just on the cusp of hundreds of companies working on CRISPR and gene therapy. And this is the hottest thing in biotech right now.
المشهد 25 يعلق السيد إد: أعني تخيل القدرة على رفض حقيقة أن لديك استعداد للإصابة بأمراض القلب أو أحد أشكال السرطان. هل يمكننا تغيير شخص ما وجعله أكثر ذكاء؟ هل يمكنك تغيير ذكاء شخص ما من خلال تغيير الجينوم الخاص به؟
There's a lot of genes involved in intelligence, and the brain has to be wired from an early age.
Okay.
But we know that drugs are capable of making you more intelligent, or at least give you more creativity. So we could do that, theoretically. But one of the things I'm excited about is being able to alter our bodies in ways that make us resistant to certain diseases.
Okay.
Heart disease, HIV. Now, we can get to that.
Yeah, go ahead.
There are 2 kids on this planet that were genetically modified to be resistant to HIV. That's craziness. Now, crazy to think about. Now, there's a whole debate. We in the world should start debating whether we want to not just help ourselves, but we want to make our kids resistant to heart disease, to cancer. We know how to do this. If you said, David, could I make my kids resistant to cancer? That's easy. I could do that in my lab. One of my students could do it. It's not difficult. We know that there are species that live a lot longer than us. They have certain gene variants. They have special types of these longevity genes. Whales can live 200 years. We know pretty much what they're doing. They're stabilizing their epigenome, their DVDs don't get scratched as much. So whales can live 200 years. So it's possible. We know some of the genes that are involved. We could give ourselves that, or we could give our children that.
Why would we not? What are the negative implications of something like that?
Well, we just want to make sure it's safe. I think that's the main
what
one.
else is it doing? Is that what you mean?
Right. You could make them intelligent, but they might then get cancer the next week.
I got you. So I want to make sure I pronounce it right. Senolytics. Am I saying that correctly?
Senolytics?
Yes.
Yeah.
What is it?
Well, they're exciting too.
Okay.
That's also been a breakthrough. So as I mentioned that before we figured out how to reprogram the body, the best technology and understanding we had were these hallmarks of aging. There are about 8 of these. And I mentioned some of them.
Yeah.
One of the main ones is senescent cells which accumulate.
Right. Okay.
Right. So when you get a really bad scratch DVD, when your cells forget what type of cell they are, they can kill themselves, but if they don't kill themselves, they become senescent. So what's senescent? They actually, instead of dying, they just sit there like zombies. Yes. And that'd be fine, except they start to secrete these factors that cause other cells that are healthy to grow old and defective. Inflammation is a big problem.
Yeah.
And we think that senescent cells are causing this problem. Okay. So senolytics is just a word for drugs that will kill off those cells when they're not dying themselves.
Got it.
And in mice, if you do that, they get rejuvenated.
Okay.
And they get younger.
المشهد 26 يعلق السيد إد: حسنا، بالنسبة للأشخاص الذين لا يستطيعون شراء العوامل المساعدة للحفاظ على الشباب الدائم كالميتوفورمين والريزوفيراتول وغيرها، هل يمكنك تقديم نصائح متعلقة بالتغذية أو العادات الصحية مثلا يمكن أن تؤدي نفس الغرض؟
So I absolutely agree with you that we can talk about gene therapy for tens, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars, which is great if you're losing your vision, by the way, but these are not available to everybody.
Right.
And I just got back from Africa a few months ago, and you know, believe me, there are people in this world that don't care about anti-aging.
Sure.
We also don't call it anti-aging where I come from, because anti-aging is a whole group of people who are working on other things. So we call it longevity research. But what if there was one thing you asked me that I could give advice, or maybe a few things? The first would be eat less often. There are studies that have been done with my colleagues at the National Institute of Health. They gave mice who have very similar metabolisms to us, very different diets. They wanted to know, is it better to eat more meat or to eat more carbohydrate or more fat?
Okay.
Big debate. And the result blew me away.
Okay.
He found that it wasn't better to eat more meat. He found it wasn't better to eat more fat, and it wasn't better to eat more carbohydrate.
Okay.
It wasn't what you ate. All those mice lived a normal lifespan.
How much you ate?
But
how
the
often?
ones that ate it in a small time of day, 2 hours a day, lived 20% longer.
Wow.
So here's the take-home message.
Wow.
If that's right, it's not so much what you eat, it's when you eat that's important.
Okay.
And so I've gone on a diet where I restrict when I eat. I try not to eat breakfast, try not to eat lunch. That has made me feel a lot better. I'm sharper, and I think that I'm going to live longer because of that.
Okay.
So that's step one.
Okay.
And in fact, that saves money.
Sure
Right.
does, right.
Right. And don't overindulge in anything. Don't just eat all meat, in my view. Don't eat all fat.
Okay.
You want to mix it up. Trick your body. Oh, I'm running out of this. I'm running out of that. And even with resveratrol, don't have to take it every day. Take it every other day. Tricks your body. Another thing that's cheap. Get off your ass.
Okay.
I typed a book, and I think I aged a lot writing this book, actually, but it was worth it. But if you don't get your body into a state of breathlessness or get your muscles to be tired and sore, your body will say, hey, everything's good. I don't need to fight diseases. I don't need to fight aging.
Okay.
So you lose your breath at least a few times a week if you can.
Okay.
Get on a treadmill. I think 40 minutes is great. 10 minutes is good. But anything is better than nothing.
Okay.
What else is good? So what I do when I go to the gym on Sunday with my son.
You go once a week.
Well, I try to go more.
Okay.
And I'm on planes a lot.
Yeah.
But I have a home gym, so I try to do a little bit. But I don't live a perfect life. It's maybe why I take extra molecules to try and supplement.
المشهد 27 يعلق السيد إد: لا شك أنك مشغول جدا، فأنت في هذا الإنجاز الضخم تمتلك شركات متعددة ومختبرات، كل الأعمال التي تقوم بها إضافة للعائلة والأطفال. في بعض الأحيان قد تتراجع لياقتك وتغذيتك، أليس كذلك؟ وهو على الأرجح الشيء الوحيد الذي لم تذكر، وأنا متفاجئ ولم أسمع أنك تتحدث عن هذا الأمر، لكن لا تكن أكثر تعاسة. لذا وأنا لا أفعل ذلك ليس بالضرورة جزءا من البحث، ربما تكون. لكن هل يعيش الناس السعداء أطول؟
It's true, but one of the reasons we don't talk about it is that we don't understand why it works.
Okay.
But
because as a scientist, you have to be able to prove why it works. Okay.
Yeah, that's why people didn't regard aging as a disease, which I do. We didn't understand why aging happened, so we said, oh,
Okay.
it's natural, let's not deal with that. But now, like cancer, we understand, we think how it works. You can focus on that. Now it's okay to say it's a problem. Happiness, wishy-washy.
Okay.
But all of the centenarians, the people that live to 100, they're always happy
That's
people.
right. Right.
Right. Mind you, if I lived to 100, I'd be pretty happy too.
Right. No, there's a good
No,
point.
but they've been happy their whole life.
Yes.
And that's definitely works. But I haven't been happy my whole life. I'm a lot happier now that I'm 50 because I've learned what a bad day is, and most days are not bad days, even if you think they're bad. But yeah, early in my life, I was quite depressed actually.
المشهد 28 يعلق السيد إد: ما الذي تريده من أبحاثك دكتور ديفيد؟ هل لديك أهداف محددة؟
I want to leave the world way better than I found it, at least somewhat better. And I find myself in a position of great responsibility. Now I'm at Harvard and I've got this research. So I'm maximizing my day without sacrificing my family as best I can. But early in my career, because I set such a high goal from an early age, ever since I was 4, I wanted to understand why we age and wake the world up. Why aren't we worried about this? This is not good. We treat cancer, we treat heart disease, we treat frailty, we treat Alzheimer's. But you know what causes all of those things? Aging. Why don't we care? And so I've always set that goal. And there were stages in my life where I thought I wasn't going to achieve anything. I saw that I was stuck in thought I was stuck in Australia. I just finished a PhD. There were no jobs for PhDs who were studying the sex life of a yeast cell. That's what I trained in.
That's awesome.
And I thought, what have I done? I've worked myself into such specialization. I'm not going to change the world. I might make some yeast happier, but that's about it. And being inconsequential is worse than death for me. I want to wake up every day feeling as though I'm going to make a difference.
المشهد 29 يعلق السيد إد: أشعر أن ما نصفه هذا صناعة طول العمر هذه سنسميها الموجة الكبيرة التالية، ولكن ما هي النصيحة التي تقدمها لرجل الأعمال الذي يسمع هذه الأشياء منك وكل الاحتمالات التي تأتي معها؟ ماذا يجب أن يفكروا أو يفعلوا؟
So the world has changed a lot in the last few years. I was the first young guy to start companies on longevity. And if people are wondering, it's all on my website. I've started more than 15 companies. I've helped dozens, and I've taken 4 public.
Awesome.
I reinvest all that money, by the way, in startups and jobs and philanthropy. So
Awesome.
I'm not trying to make money. I'm trying to leave the world better. But if someone could have instructed me when I was young, what I would have said to them is identify a trend, and if you don't have the money to invest, get involved in startups, but work with the best people. Don't work with mediocre people, because things are going to get really hard when you start up a company. Things are going to fail. You may be near bankruptcy, and you want to be with people that you can trust. So I don't work with assholes anymore. Done with that.
That's awesome.
Really, that's the first criterion. And you know, my friends are all like family to me, and vice versa. So that's actually one of the best bits about getting older, is you have this group of people you can trust. But from the outset, I wish that I had always worked with the best of the best. So look for that. If you have a little bit of money, you can invest in something like this. Some of these companies are just getting started, and the field is exploding. So I agree with you that longevity research is going to make the iPhone look like old news.
I do too.
المشهد 30 يسأل السيد إد الدكتور ديفيد: هل أنت تخاف الموت؟
To be afraid to die when I was in my 20s and 30s, because I wanted to see where things would go. And there's this natural fear in all of us. But I now know that I'm not afraid, because I fly a lot, and a few times those planes were going down, and I had felt that I was going to die. It was going to be sad that I'd miss my family would have to do without me. But personally, I'm not worried about that. My wife is the opposite. She grabs onto my arm and I'm going to die. And I say, if we die, we die. She, I don't want to die. And I'm just like, as long as it's not too painful, I'm good with it. So letting go of the fear of death was one of the best things I ever did in my life. Because now I can live without fear.
You got it.
That's the key.
المشهد 31 يعلق السيد إد: لهذا السبب سألتك يا ديفيد، أعتقد حقا أن التخلي عن الخوف من الموت يسمح لك بالعيش بحرية، وأنا يجب أن أخبركم كما لو أنني متحمس أكثر للحياة وأين تتجه وما هي الاحتمالات، لأن شخصا مثلك موجود في العالم. أنا معجب بك حقا، وأنا سعيد لأننا أصبحنا أصدقاء. ستبقى قريب جدا مني لأنني أريد أن أعيش وقتا طويلا. شكرا جزيلا دكتور ديفيد. وهنا نود في قناة الشباب الدائم تقديم الشكر للسيد إد وبرنامجه الذي استضاف فيه الدكتور ديفيد سنكلير، وسنقدم لاحقا فيديوهات مشابهة من أجل مواكبة التطورات الجارية عالميا في مجال الشباب الدائم. شكرا لكم على المتابعة، ونرجو منكم الاشتراك في القناة حتى يصلكم كل جديد، كما نرجو منكم مشاركة الفيديو حتى يستفيد منه أكبر عدد من الناس. كما نرجو العلم بأن قناة الشباب الدائم تقدم الاستشارات الطبية المجانية لجميع الحالات المرضية، لذلك يرجى التواصل مع القناة.